Vixe, é literatura? Oh no, it's literature.
Hello dear listeners, I'm Raquel Ribeiro, professor of English Literature at Universidade Estadual do Ceará, Campus Fecli in Iguatu, State of Ceará, Brazil. And I'm thrilled to be invited to contribute to Vixe é Literatura podcast. I'm honored to be here talking to you about literature in this student project because it's so exciting to see and to listen to these brave students showing their enthusiasm for literature and for the English language and showing it to the world in the shape of a podcast. I was invited to contribute to this episode and decided to talk a little about a poet I've recently started to admire, Nikki Giovanni, an African-American poet born in 1943 in Knoxville, Tennessee. She just turned 81 years old on June 7th. Let's listen to her poem called Baby West. Baby West by Nikki Giovanni. Baby West, my godmother, died and left me $50 in her will. Where would I be without that $50? Mr. Gray, who drove not taxi but private car, asked the white man he was taking to the airport if he could let his niece ride up front. He also dropped me at the train station $50 for a ticket to Knoxville and $1 for peppermint. I purchased a 45 RPM, but I don't remember which one. I spent the summer with grandmother and grandpapa, not realizing a man on a Latin school teacher's pension and a woman who occasionally cooked for white folk could hardly afford another mouth to feed. More hot water for baths, electricity for the radio, WGN until it signed off at midnight. I had no idea grandmother had to beg a white man to let me enroll in Austin High. What I needed clothes for miles and breeches, shoes, a coat and stuff, and all I knew then was the sound of my father hitting my mother every Saturday night until I heard her say, "Gus, please don't hit me." And I knew my choice. Leave or kill him. Both were said. I am in the hospital room with yellow tulips from Nancy and Diana and a beautiful bouquet from the English department. I'm trying to learn how to cry. It's not that my life has been a lie, but that I repressed my tears. We always teach the youngsters, don't cry, it will be all right. But crying cleanses, it will not be all right. But we will learn. We can do nothing about it. I have seizures because I am thinking of my mother being hit by my father. It would not be all right, so I must learn to cry. This poem is from Nikki Giovanni's collection called A Good Cry. There are so many ways we could start appreciating this poem, but Baby West called my attention mainly because of the verses in which she discusses her own act of crying. Crying now that she's an old woman, and when she says, quote, "I am trying to learn how to cry. It's not that my life has been a lie, but that I repressed my tears." Unquote. But for me, these verses are so strong. And even though she shows herself so vulnerable about her desire to learn how to cry, that is the part I think is so evocative. Have you ever thought about that? About crying being an ability? Is crying an ability for you? A skill? Well, personally, I cry easily. I don't know about you, but I cry when I am upset or angry, and I think it's kind of annoying. Are you the same? Or are you the kind of person who needs to learn how to cry, how to be vulnerable? Have you ever felt you have to show yourself as a strong person, not showing any weakness, trying to laugh to keep yourself from crying. That's what Kendra and Brian says while analyzing A Good Cry, the book, right, by Nikki Giovanni. And I quote, basically, Nick laughs to keep from crying, which is a common mode of survival within Black communities, unquote. And how this still impresses me, how Brian says that. Now it seems Nikki learned that crying cleanses from the repressed tears of her youth while listening to her mother being beaten by her abusive father, and that she had a choice to make, to leave or to kill him. And both options were sad, she says. And her poem actually shows how complex family relationships can be. That's when we learned why she left to live with her grandparents and while she was still a teenager, and how things were still difficult, all the economical sacrifices her grandparents made to let her stay with them. So now, years later, a successful poet, professor in an English department, she analyzes how this kind of trauma resonates to her own age. And she says, I quote, I have seizures because I am thinking of my mother being hit by my father, unquote. And that pain stayed with her. And if she didn't cry then, in the past, she wants to learn to cry now. This poem was published in her collection, as I said, A Good Cry. That collection was published in the United States in 2017 and translated here in Brazil, published the translation by Nina Risi last year, 2023. And I keep referring to Nikki as the persona in the poem because her poetry is deeply based on her life and her political views, and so many works by Audre Lorde, Gwendolyn Brooks, Maya Angelou, for example. They are all representative of what is called Black arts poetry movement, and that wanted to include the Black female perspective. And although that work is considered more political than private, the poetry resonates to many people, especially women, with all of these private experiences being shared, right? And if we think about a female poet now, an old woman showing a desire to be vulnerable, what do you think it says about her? Did she used to be tougher? I do believe so. And if we look for more information about Nikki Giovanni, we'll find lots of videos of poetry reciting, in which she talks about her life, her family. She seems to be pretty open about her life, her experiences, and how she so humbly recites her own poems. Before we go, I'd like to quote from Nikki's website when she concludes her biography saying, quote, I highly recommend Old Age. It's fun. Unquote. And after enumerating all her achievements with her poetry, and she says, I don't have a lot of friends, but I have good ones. I have a son and a granddaughter. My father, mother, sister, and middle aunt are all deceased, literally making me from being the baby in the family to being an elder. I like to cook, travel, and dream. I'm a writer. I'm happy. And she finishes. So that's it, everyone. I hope you'd like to know more about this incredible poet, Nikki Giovanni. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Vixe, é literatura? Oh no, it's literature.